Welcome to TFL Talkin Trucks. On this episode, we're going to look a little bit deeper at the truck that I think most of us cannot wait to actually see and get in and drive, which is the upcoming 2022 Toyota Tundra. And to do this, I'm joined by a special guest. This is David Chao. And David Chao, I would like you to introduce yourself, but you have been kind of working in the automotive industry for what, over 30 years?
Yes. So first of all, thank you for inviting me, Andre. Really excited to be on TFL podcast, and also very excited about talking about the Tundra, which all of us are patiently waiting for. But yes, I spent my entire life in automotive engineering and manufacturing. And so I was born and raised in Japan, but grew up in the US and Canada. And for the last 35 years, I have been working as an automotive consultant and engineer. So I'm sort of in the auto industry and had worked for Toyota and suppliers. And so I design and build cars for a living. And I'm still teaching other companies how to implement and apply what we call Toyota Production System, or TPS. And so that's my primary job. And I have a YouTube channel on the side to express my passion for cars. So thank you again for inviting me.
Yeah, and of course your YouTube channel is Automotive Press, right?
Yes, Automotive Press, all one word, correct?
Yeah, yes. And automotivepress.com. So guys, if you want to learn more and see what David is doing, also on some of the upcoming vehicles and also car news, you can check it out, of course. But David, I want to focus our discussion today on the Tundra. So we all know that the next generation Tundra is coming soon.
Yes.
Toyota hasn't really described or disclosed exactly the time frame. We have some unofficial reports, right? But you have, like you said, you have kind of, the process, the engineering process. And the current Tundra has been mostly unchanged with a few updates, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Since 2008-ish. So that means what? It's like, 13 years approximately. So first of all, do you have any insight about, why such a long life cycle, right? What's going on?
Sure. Yeah, so first, let me just touch base on the timing you mentioned about the Tundra. So we know for sure it's going to come out this year. So I suspect the last quarter of this year, so between October and December, the Tundra should actually officially be unveiled. And a few months before that, we hope the Toyota will actually show us the concept version or some kind of rendering or photo before that. But if you work backwards using engineering method, we know for sure that Tundra is already in production at the San Antonio, Texas. So it's really just a matter of time. I suspect that you'll come out in the next couple of months. So that's a big news. But coming back to your questions about the timing, so Toyota has a very interesting strategy in terms of how they work with their cars and trucks. And so if something is doing reasonably well and it's a localized product, they don't necessarily change it very often. So for example, the Tundra is a North American product. They don't sell that in Asia. In Asia, they have the Hilux, and that's a global product. So they'll spend more time engineering something like that requires a higher, more often life cycle changes. And so it really depends on how the product is interfaced within their lineup. And I'm a little bit surprised that Tundra took this long. That is definitely a surprise, but Toyota was very busy focusing on the hybrids and now the EV strategy. And so they're going to focus on what matters the most for their business. And things that are selling reasonably well, that people are not necessarily asking for a brand new version of it, they'll probably likely leave it for a long time. So that's one reason.
Yeah, but also, they have updated the Tundra. So I say 2008. Right, but in about 2013, 2014, they did a design update on the outside. And then recently they added technology to the truck, right? A few years ago, they added a trailer brake controller. Then more recently, they had different versions of the TRD Pro. And then they entered the Toyota Safety Sense, right? So some of the assistance technologies, they have also added to their truck. So it's not like they just stepped away and forgot about it, right?
Of course.
So
so I think Toyota will continue to update the product and refine, but Toyota is a master of cost reduction and cost cutting, and they are the smartest people in the world when it comes to what we call cost containment, which is to maximize the value to customers while minimizing the cost of development and engineering. So if they can keep on updating a product and make it reasonably proactive in the marketplace, but not spend billions to redesign it, then they'll hold off, right? That's really the idea. And so because the Tundra's platform is linked with other models, if they're going to change the Tundra, then they have to change the other models. So it's not just a singular model they're trying to redesign. It's linked to the Land Cruiser, which shares the platform, and the Sequoia, which is also shares the platform. And of course, the Land Cruiser shares the platform, or it's almost identical to Lexus LX, which also shares the platform with a GX, which is sold as Land Cruiser Prado in Japan.
Yeah.
So on and on and on, right? So there's a number of different models all linked together in the same platform. So in order to change the Tundra, they're going to have to also modify and change over all of those models, which is all happening in the next 2 years.
Yeah, so it seems like, and I want to discuss kind of the platform a little bit, but also a little bit later in the podcast, I also want to discuss some of the renderings that you did. There's one of them behind me. So if you're listening to us, if you want to actually see what we're talking about, you can go to either our YouTube channel, TFL Talk, for TFL Talkin Trucks, or Automotive Press, of course, with David. And you can kind of see some of the renderings of what the Tundra may look like, depending, on the information we currently have. So talk to me about this TNGA-F, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So TNGA, so first of all, TNGA stands for Toyota New Global Architecture, is their new phrase. But it is really basically what we used to call the platform engineering or synchronous engineering. These are terminology that we've been using for years. And Toyota, again, is an absolute brilliant company when it comes to figuring out the best way to engineer and design and develop cars. But what happened over the last several years, maybe even over the last 20 years, is that, Akio Toyoda, whom I've met many times, have said that sometimes they suffer from big company disease. And so what happened was the platform got expanded to the point where they had, more than 50 different platforms that covers all of their models throughout the world. So one of the reasons for TNGA platform is the fundamental change in how they design cars and trucks, and to simplify and bring together all of the different platforms so that there's only 5 or 6 instead of 50 or 60. So that's one reason. And so, for example, the first TNGA car was the TNGA-C, which is for the Prius. Mm-hmm. And then came the Camry, RAV4, Venza. They all share the same platform, which is the K platform. And then the Lexus LC and LS is the L platform. And then there's two new ones, which is the F platform for the trucks, and then the E platform for the incoming EV models, right? So those are all the new TNGA. But there's a big misunderstanding what TNGA really is. And that is the TNGA really is the whole approach and the methodology for designing and developing cars. It doesn't just refer to the actual platform. And so how they design the car by bringing together all of the different areas of the business into one collaborative approach. We call that obeya in Japanese. It means one big room. And the way they allow the engineers, the purchasing, manufacturers, suppliers come together and co-develop in a collaborative fashion in the shortest time possible, that's really the TNGA approach. So loosely, we say TNGA platform, but it's actually TNGA methodology or approach. And so that's a fundamental change in the way they design and build cars together. But also, in terms of getting into specific, that the structure is much more stiff, maybe 10 to 20% stiffer, and then they lower some of the body lines so that you have better visibility. And because the structure is stiffer, you can change the way suspension works with the body and improve the handling at the same time. So there is many benefits to the new TNGA platform.
So, but you're talking about in general, right? So
sure.
So making the vehicle stiffer, not specifically to the Tundra. You're saying that's kind of the overall methodology, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So if I were to talk a little bit more about, specifically about the Tundra, so Tundra is a TNGA-F platform. So that platform is also shared with Land Cruiser, the current Land Cruiser, which is called the 200 series, and then the new one, which is called the 300 series. So that will also use TNGA-F platform. And then, of course, going beyond that, there is a Lexus LX, then there is a Sequoia, there is Tacoma, and then Lexus GX. So they all share the same TNGA F platform.
And also, is the 4Runner in the same family? Do you know?
Yes, sorry, yeah. 4Runner is also going to adopt a TNGA F platform. But of course, all these cars have different sizes, right? So they're all body on the frame, but they have different sizes.
So, and like right now, or up to now, I guess, Toyota has produced the Tacoma and the Tundra at the same factory in San Antonio, for example, right?
Correct, yes.
And to me, or to kind of a more common person who doesn't know the interworkings, is kind of interesting because you're building two different widths and sizes and lengths of a vehicle on the same kind of a factory line. So can you talk to me about that? How difficult is that?
Sure, sure. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into not just engineering of trucks and cars, but also sorting out how they're going to be manufactured. But there's a very, very important point about manufacturing cars or trucks, and we call those locating pins. So underneath the car, or in this case, the truck, there is 2 or 3 locating pins that has to pivot and hold the body frame in place to move them through the manufacturing process. You don't want to move the locating pins from one model to the next model because then the entire supporting structure underneath the equipment, what we call the equipment fixtures, the automation equipment, all of them have to be re-engineered if you move the pivoting point up and down. But if you keep the locating pins the same, but stretch the frame or the body longer or shorter, you still have to re-engineer many parts of manufacturing, but it's way simpler because they can share the same holding fixture, we call it. So in the case of, let's say, comparing Tundra to the future Tacoma or Land Cruiser, let's say, they're going to have to stretch the frame to some degree. Okay, most of the stretching is going to be on the body that's going to go above the frame, but of course between, let's say, Tundra and Tacoma, the frame has to be different size, right? So they're going to stretch it so the front and back portion will get longer, possibly a little bit wider, but the locating pins should be the same. So that makes it possible to synchronize the manufacturing process among all these different models because the fixture that holds the frame in place can still be used. So that's one technique. And to be honest, this so-called platform sharing technology within Toyota is massive. So most people don't know, like RAV4 shares platform with many hundreds of different Toyota cars. And so if you look underneath, if you think of the car as like a Kleenex box, then what you see outside the box might be different, but underneath the base, it's actually very similar among many, many different cars already. So the underneath it's like a skateboard, we call it in the electric car terminology. But even in the gasoline car, the platform underneath is very similar and shared across the board. So that's how they reduce the cost and to make it simpler to produce more and more different variations.
That's very interesting. And you mentioned the Land Cruiser a couple times, right? So currently in the North America or United States, the 200 series, Toyota said that they will discontinue that model for at least North America or United States market. And 300 series is coming, right?
Yes.
And it still hasn't been unveiled yet officially.
Right.
And then obviously there's some, probably sharing. So what do we know about the 300 series, the next Land Cruiser? Do we know anything as far
Sure,
as
sure.
what it will be?
Right. So what we don't know is whether they will bring back the new version of Land Cruiser for the North American market. So we don't know that. That's a marketing decision. But of course, a new Land Cruiser will be introduced to other markets, Asia and Europe and so forth. And so there has been a number of leaked photos out there already. So if you Google that, I'm sure it'll come out. But the new 300 series will come out this year. Because I speak Japanese, I'm stay in touch with the Japanese media, and everything points to May introduction as a Japanese introduction. So I think it'll be unveiled around May, June timeframe. And then followed by, I guess we'll find out whether Toyota USA will introduce it, bring it back to North America. My feeling is that they will not do that because it's too close to Lexus LX. And so I think they would prefer to have that differentiation and really focus on other Toyota products and not have a two product that's too similar to each other. So sorry, go ahead.
But what can we learn from kind of the other markets? Because there's a lot of kind of rumors surrounding this 3.5-liter engine or the turbocharged engine that the 300 series Land Cruiser may have in other markets like Australia, Asia, like you said, other territories.
Sure.
Can we learn anything from that, or is it just kind of out there?
Good. So that's a really great question, Andre. So everything right now, all the information that I can gather points to the Land Cruiser, at least in the sort of Western market, to have the 3.5-liter twin turbo V6. Now, officially, it's actually a 3.444-liter engine, so it's not quite 3.5. It's the engine that's used in the current Lexus LS. Now, it's a little bit odd to use a car engine over to a truck, so they're going to have to modify the engine a fair amount. But it's the only twin turbo V6 that's in the current Toyota lineup. And because Toyota does not like to introduce a brand new engine with a brand new car, because they're a very risk averse company, right? So you can't take a chance with a brand new body and a brand new powertrain. So they're going to stay with the tried and true. And so we suspect that the twin turbo V6 from the Lexus LS will be modified for truck market and introduced to the Land Cruiser, along with, of course, they will eventually hit the Tundra as well. And then, of course, the big question is that there will also be a hybrid version of that. So right now, there is no 3.5-liter V6 twin turbo combined with hybrid anywhere in the Toyota lineup. Right now, the hybrid that you see in Lexus LS is using a non-turbo 3.5 with a hybrid system with a motor. So, but everything we're hearing is saying that they will combine the twin turbo 3.5 with a motor to create the hybrid. So that will be a new combination that we have not seen anywhere else yet. So would that show up in Land Cruiser and eventually to Tundra? That's what we think so. But of course, we're not 100% sure. We don't know for sure yet. Yeah. And then the Land Cruiser, like the 300 series in Japan, will have like diesel engine options and smaller 4-cylinder engine options. So those will not come to North America anyway. So our focus really is on that 3.444-liter engine, which we think that's going to be the case. So if people are still hoping and wishing that the V8 engine will carry over through the Land Cruiser onto the Tundra, that's not going to happen, because we already heard a number of rumors that both the Alabama factory in the US and the Tahara plant in Japan, both of factories I've been to, they are going to stop producing the V8 engine in a few years. So they're not going to stop producing a V8 engine in a few years and then still put a V8 engine in a new model, which has a long life cycle, right?
I see. Yeah, a lot of people hoped, because recently the Lexus IS F Sport came out, and it has a 5-liter V8. And I got a lot of emails and texts and messages about, wait, they have a 5-liter engine, why don't they use that now? But it's not that simple, of course, right? Because a performance car may have different life than a truck, right?
Yeah, I think in that case, it's a sort of marketing strategy to give a new life to the IS because it's even though it was revised and facelifted, this recently it's not all new model, and they got to compete with the Acura TOX Type S coming up. So I think that was a marketing decision to put that engine in there, kind of surprised all of us. But that engine cannot go into a truck. It's a different type of engine altogether. It was never engineered to go into a truck. So yes, that's a nice wish list of things to happen, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Gotcha. So recently we also had some prototype images that came out that showed underneath this Tundra prototype, right? And
Yes, yes.
it also showed some of the grill, and you've kind of used that image, right, in your renderings. But it looked like underneath the axle itself, some of the placement of the fuel tank and the frame. First of all, it was coil suspension, so
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
not leaves in the
Not
back, which is
leaves. Yeah.
traditional how trucks have been designed. And then some people also pointed to me that said, that rear end with coils looks similar to the Land Cruiser. Do you have any insight into that?
Right. So because the Tundra will share the TNGA F platform with the Land Cruiser. So first of all, if what we saw underneath looks like what is either in the current Land Cruiser or the next generation Land Cruiser, that makes sense. They're going to share the same platform. Now, I don't think what was shown in those leaked photo is a current 200 series Land Cruiser. That wouldn't make sense because Land Cruiser is also all new. So what's likely happening is that the 300 series Land Cruiser underpinning and suspension is probably very similar to the 200 series and looks similar because they don't need to make a huge change again between the two. So that's what I think it is. It is still using the 300. It is using the new 300 series Land Cruiser. But however, as you pointed out in the last video, the exhaust is on the opposite side to normal.
Yeah.
Right. So is it possible they were using, the only possible explanation for that is because it's an engineering prototype. Did they use the underpinning and the chassis from a 300 series Land Cruiser from Japan and place the Tundra body on top because they share the same platform for the purpose of testing with the idea that, of course, they'll switch over to the other side when the official model comes out. That would be the only thing I can think of because it's kind of weird it will be on that side.
Yeah, it is kind of strange because we're not used to that. It's either, dual system where you have two exhausts coming out, or on the passenger side, not the driver.
Correct,
but
yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about this because, well, first of all, TFL, we're here in Colorado. We see a lot of prototypes also because there's high elevation testing in the mountains. There's cold weather also that happens in the mountains, cold weather testing. How does some of the manufacturers, first of all, they need to test in the real world because you can only do so many simulations, right?
Right.
And so many kind of computer design. But they need to camouflage the vehicle, right?
Yes,
and
yes,
then,
yeah.
And then how soon, is there kind of a guideline on, is it a year in advance or 2 years in advance that you put your vehicle in a camouflage state? How does that work?
Sure. So there's a number of different stages the car companies have to go through before the production. So the most important date is what we call SOP, which stands for start of production. So Toyota never misses SOP date, regardless of the pandemic or maybe the chip shortage might affect them. But generally speaking, they stay true to that date. They engineer inside the schedule. So let's assume for a moment that the latest Tundra will appear November, December, let's say worst case scenario.
Let's say December.
Let's say December. Okay. So you got to work backwards. It's going to take 3 months, right, for the product to be manufactured and shipped to dealer. So that means no matter what, the final versions has to be up and running and being produced on a regular basis by August, September timeframe. Okay. So that means by 3 months before that, all the engineering prototypes are completed, and basically they're producing Tundra at a lower volume to test out the equipment. So that will bring it to June. So by June, they're producing something close to the actual models we will get. So if you keep working backward, then what we're seeing in the leaked photo, those are very early prototypes, but as you know, the most recent one we saw has the vinyl camouflage.
Mhm.
Those are probably more recent because they absolutely have to cover the body because the underneath is probably likely very close to the real one. And I know for sure those are very close to the final product because you can see the grill now, the honeycomb grill that we saw, the bright grill behind the camouflage, and that they look production to me. They look production ready. So that would be the what we call the stage 3 or stage 4 prototype, which is just before the final production. So that those would have been in production or in prototyping stage 3 to 6 months before the final production, which makes sense, right? So the last 6 months or so is when they will be running around with this final version. And so they will be 98%, 99% close to the final model. And then anything before that, so going back about, let's say last summer or earlier, would be stage 2 or stage 1 or stage 2 prototype. So they could still change a little bit. But typically speaking, design is locked in a year to year and a half before production. So by by January of last year, all design would have been totally locked in because suppliers and everyone else has to build it. So, but as you get closer and closer to the production date, they're going to camouflage more and more. And if they don't camouflage, they begin to peel away the camouflage. I think it's on purpose to allow some media to pick it up and to create the hype for the new model. But honestly, Toyota has such extensive design and field testing capability. They don't actually have to bring it out to the street to do the final testing. Eventually, they will, like you said, for high altitude, for winter testing. But they can test it in their field for longest time. So that happens for a few years before that.
Yeah, and also obviously all manufacturers have some sort of proving grounds, right? And their own facilities where they test vehicles. And actually, it's interesting when you said, last year, I remember some of our viewers, sent us images, I want to say a year ago, of camouflaged trucks that looked like Tundra prototypes, but they had old cab. It looked like they had the whole cab was current Tundra, but maybe because of the bed length, it looked like it was longer. So and everybody was saying, wait a minute, why are they using the same cab on this truck? But it's that wasn't the final product, right? That was just probably a prototype that was being tested.
Right, so that will be an earlier prototype, engineering prototype. So that's for the purpose of testing the mechanics of the truck. So they can place any parts of the old body on top of the new frame and a new engine and then test it out. But that only carries on for a very, very short time because you have to eventually put the new body in. It's either that or the cab. It just looks like old, but it could be the new model. I don't think that's the case, but they do that all the time. They put the old body on top of the new frame, and it's easy with trucks because all the powertrain is stuck to the frame and not to the body, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's interesting, you're saying, sometimes manufacturers peel away some of the camouflage to raise excitement, but there's also engineering behind it. I mean, because, aerodynamics or some other factors, maybe fuel economy, because I know, I think it was a couple of years ago, the new Ram heavy duty trucks were coming out. And actually, we saw, or the spy photographers saw, uncovered Ram new trucks driving in public before the world debut. So they decided, we can't wait. Let's send them out and gather some more data. And they did it. That was kind of crazy.
Right. So the other type of camouflage is the stick-on type, like a wrap, like a body wrap. And, you see this kind of circle or, kind of funny looking pattern. So if they plaster that on the body, then it's as close as you can get to testing in the real world. But the one that we're seeing so far with Toyota is the vinyl camouflage. That one has to eventually come out, like you said, because you need to check for wind noise and other things that can only be tested with the camouflage out. But some car companies like the Ram or Dodge may reveal sort of show more skin, I guess, simply because they're ready for some excitement before the official launch. So that's I guess anybody's guess. But Toyota is very secretive, and they're very good at being secretive.
Yeah.
So, we're actually pretty fortunate to see so much leaked photo from Tundra, because so far there has been nothing on the 4Runner or the Tacoma, right? Tacoma is still 2 years away, but 4Runner is next year. So we should be seeing something so far. But the difference between the 4Runner and Tundra is the 4Runner is built in the Tahara factory in Japan. So if there is a camouflaged photo, it will be revealed in Japan versus here, and there's less people taking picture of camouflage cars in Japan than here. So that's probably why we haven't seen it yet.
That's very interesting. Yeah, so can we talk a little bit about your rendering now?
Yes, absolutely.
So a couple of images came out where this new Tundra kind of a front end was a bit visible. And the best way I can describe it as far as the new headlight design. And once again, we don't know if this is official, right? Or if this is going to be, for real. But it almost looks like kind of like the current 4Runner in a way. Do you think that's fair to say, with kind of horizontal lights up front that also has like a vertical signature?
Right. So if you just look at the headlight portion, so there has been a number of leaked photos that clearly shows the headlight portion. And so if you look at it, there is some similarities to the 4Runner with the teardrop design, although the turn signal portion stretches a little bit further into the front quarter panel, so that's different. And there's a big, very dramatic drop from the headlight down. There's a dramatic drop into, like, again, teardrop style. So that's somewhat unique to the Tundra. But I mean, obviously they're going to carry some family resemblance, so it's not surprising that it has some features of the 4Runner, which people like it very much. And then, as you pointed out in the last video you guys did, for the first time we can see the grille behind the camouflage, and it looks like a chrome honeycomb design. And so, I mean, my prediction or my forecast is that that particular model is the more luxury version, the limited or platinum, or even 1794 if that comes out. And as you probably know, what Toyota does with new model is that depending on the models, the front grille changed quite dramatically. So even if you look at the Camry or other models, the front design changes based on what trim levels they have. So I suspect that there is one grille or one look for the limited platinum 1794 models, and another design for the TRD Pro or the either off-road or sport type models. So one is more off-road looking and one is more luxurious looking. So I've done the rendering on both types. I'm pretty confident that the TRD Pro and the limited that you're showing is reasonably accurate. I mean, I can never guarantee anything, but what I've done is it's a composite of all the things I've seen so far. And in fact, the honeycomb grille that I've pasted onto my rendering, I actually took the snippet of the grille from your rendering, from your spy photos, and then multiplied it and pasted onto the rendering to scale. So it's exactly the replica of the spy photo. So I'm pretty confident they're accurate, but I know lots of people are saying, how do you know if this is accurate or not? Well, there's been enough leaks of the different parts of the Tundra. When you put them all together in the composite format and you scale it to correctly using engineering method, it has to be pretty accurate. So I'm pretty confident about that.
Okay, that's very interesting. And obviously, Toyota, I'm sure, and I think most people would agree, they would have a wide range of trim levels, right?
Right.
Like you said, the base level, the SR, maybe the SR5, maybe the Sport, right?
Right.
TRD Off-Road, TRD Pro, Limited, Platinum, because that's what competitors are doing, right?
Exactly,
So if you look at competition for GM, Ram, they have a wide array of trim levels, also powertrains, right? Power levels, different powertrains. So I think what we're seeing a glimpse of here for the Tundra is, once again, a unique grille maybe for each trim, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, I think a couple of them might share a similar look, but between the off-road-ish models and the more luxurious models, they will have two complete distinct grille for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, so as with any company, right, you want to be competitive, you want to take market share, right, from others, not just maintaining where where you've been. So I'm really curious to see, exactly what like technology Toyota puts in the truck, right? Because, they have access to all the latest stuff.
Correct. Yes.
Um, and obviously we don't have some of that information right now. And
Yeah.
also, there's a renewed, I guess, focus on off-road, right? The Ram TRX, this is kind of a high-powered, really capable suspension truck. There's a Ford Raptor. Do you think could Toyota do something above the TRD Pro, or do you think their TRD Pro is kind of like their top off-road offering?
So good question. But if you look at the history of how Toyota markets cars and trucks, they don't actually ever go to that level. They reserve the highest performance for Lexus models, right? And Lexus doesn't have a pickup truck, at least not yet. So I mean, who knows? There might be like a TRD Pro and a TRD Pro, I don't know, Max or something else above it. But I really don't think Toyota will, at least in this life cycle, produce a high output, high performance version at the level of the Raptor or the TRX. I don't think they would do that. It's not in their nature to do that. In much the same way, if you look at the rest of the Toyota lineup, they haven't done that with their models. So
yeah, but I mean, to focus on their TRD Pro line currently, and they've refined the suspension over several
over
years.
many times, yes.
Yeah, right now they have the latest Fox shocks. They have special tuning, obviously, and a lot of other suspension technologies that they're using. And actually, it's quite good.
It's very good. Yeah.
It's very competitive. Yeah.
I have a Tacoma TRD Pro and I put a deposit on Tundra. So hopefully I'll be able to get Tundra TRD Pro. But I think the first year, just to go back to this conversation, I think the first year when the new Tundra comes out, the TRD Pro will not be available. Typically, Toyota waits about a year before they introduce some more limited edition models. So I suspect the Tundra TRD Pro will be next year, again, with those suspension pieces. But I think there seems to be reserving the hybrid version, the V6 twin turbo hybrid, for the higher performance version. So maybe that will be reserved for the limited or platinum or the TRD Pro, and the rest of the lineup might have the regular twin turbo V6. That's my suspicion.
That's very interesting. And I'm like, whenever I mentioned a Toyota truck, either the Tundra, the Tacoma, everybody says, "When is it coming?"
I know. We all want to know.
And I think, thank you very much for sharing, your insight on this. And I think it's kind of makes it, at least in my mind, a better picture of what's happening, because it sounds like Toyota is focused first for North America on the Tundra, right?
Yes.
That seems to be their focus now. And then up after that, potentially, what is it, Tacoma and 4Runner, right? I'm not sure exactly, I guess, what order that would be.
Sure. I can give you a little bit of insight on that. So as far as I know, again, using publicly available information and plus some of my insight. So what's going to happen is that my best guess is that in May, we will see the Land Cruiser come out, probably in Japan. And then June, Tundra will be revealed. I'm sure it won't be later than June. That's my suspicion. And then following very closely, Lexus LX should be introduced end of this year or early 2022, because it's all based on Land Cruiser. It'll look very similar. So that's the next one. And then the Sequoia will come early 2022 also. Okay. Because it's based on Tundra, and they already announced that it's going to be sometime I shouldn't say announced, but there's been some leak. Information is showing Sequoia will be introduced in the first 6 months of the 2022. So that's Sequoia next. And then the 4Runner will be after that. So 4Runner will be, my suspicion will be summer 2022. So about a year after Tundra, the 4Runner should come out. And then by that time, because the Lexus GX is based on the 4Runner platform, if they keep the same engineering platform, then that will come out about 6 months after that. So Tacoma, I know some people are thinking Tacoma will come out next year. No, Tacoma is a year after. So Tacoma is 2023 timeframe. So if you look at year by year, this year is the Tundra and Land Cruiser. Next year is the LX, the 4Runner, and Sequoia,
Yeah.
right? And then the following year, 2023, will be when the Tacoma will come out. So that's my best guess. I'm pretty sure I'm in the ballpark there. So that's sort of the timeline I'm thinking will happen in the next 2 to 3 years.
Have they announced where the Sequoia will be built? Do we know that?
Yeah, Sequoia is moving. So it was being built in their Indiana plant, where the Highlander is also built, but they already ceased the production there. And Sequoia is moving to San Antonio, Texas with Tundra, which makes sense because they share the same platform. And then in that process, the Tacoma, which is being produced in San Antonio right now, is being moved out to the 2 Mexican factories in Mexico, which is already producing the Tacoma now. But they're going to stop producing the Tacoma in San Antonio, Texas, and it's going to be replaced by the Sequoia production. So I know some people aren't happy about that, but this is Toyota. It doesn't matter where they are produced in the world. They have the same standard, same high level of quality. So people don't have to worry they're produced. It's going to be just as good as where it's built in the US.
Yeah, because the process is the same, like you're saying, right? And the methodology.
Exact same thinking, yes, yeah. And I visited probably more than 50 factories within the Toyota family, and I'm telling you, they all function the same. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Well, David, thank you for spending the time. I know we went a little bit longer than we hoped, but this is very interesting. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. We're really happy to be here, Andre, and perhaps more to come in my channel if you come and visit in the future. But for now, I just want to thank you and very honored to be on your channel. It's great folks you guys are. So thank you so much.
Thank you, David. And as always, Automotive Press is where you can find David on either YouTube or automotivepress.com, the website. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Andre.